You can buy a Project Debut 3 for $299, I'm not sure what it sells for here, with a cartridge. And that is sufficient for most people to hear, oh, there's something really cool about listening to records. I know that for a fact because I recommend that to more young people. And they go out and they get it like Fire Engine Red, Ferrari Red, and they love what they hear. And then I tell them, you know what, it can get better and better and better. But that will take care of your records. So if you take care of your records, that turntable will do for now. And as you get older and have more money, you can improve the sound as you go. So yeah, that'll do it. And there's plenty of good used turntables on the market. It's all a matter of setting it up correctly.
So, after having bought a first turntable, if you want to say so, what do you think is the most important to start upgrading?
After you have your first turntable?
Yeah.
Well, you know, unfortunately everything's important, but I think the setup, how you set it up is the most important thing. I mean, I used to have, before I got involved in this business professionally, I had a pair of Spica TC50s. Remember those? You've heard of those? Spicas. They were inexpensive, like $400 a pair, $500 a pair. And I had a Hafler preamp and amp that I built from kits. And I had a used Torrens turntable. So the whole system couldn't have cost more than $1,000 or $1,500. And you know what? I had as much fun with that system listening to music as I have with what I have now, which is ridiculously expensive stuff over the years. I had as much fun listening to music then. It's all about music. And if you set up the speakers right and set up the turntable right and know what you're doing, then you can have just as much fun with an inexpensive system and then slowly improve. You know? And I guess the next thing would be speakers. You know, the problem is people are ashamed of having loudspeakers. It's like, oh, we'll have to hide them in the wall or under the wall. You know, they'll have all kinds of stuff in their room. They won't have speakers. And certainly when they get married, they're not going to have speakers. They start out with big speakers, then they get married, and over the years, the speakers get smaller and smaller and smaller. And I tell guys what you have to do is get a turntable. Because then the wife is always more sonically gifted than men. You know, women hear better. So if you switch to CDs, then they're going to say get smaller and smaller speakers because they're not going to be listening to it. Then you get a turntable, and the wife comes and goes, oh, that sounds really good. Can we make bigger speakers to sound better? And eventually you'll have your big speakers back again.
Is there sort of a limit of how expensive you can get to? Is there a point of where there's no return, where you just can't seem to get better sound no matter how much money it's
I wish that were true, but I haven't found that to be the case. I mean, I really wish that were true. It can just keep getting better and better. But more important than better and better is balance. Is the equipment has to be balanced. So again, it's not how much you spend. It's how well you're able to put the ingredients together. It's like cooking. You can have the best ingredients. If you don't know how to cook it, or don't know how to mix the ingredients, it's not going to be a good meal. So I've heard absolutely mesmerizing systems that were very inexpensive, where I could sit and listen as pleasurably as I do to my own system, which is, you know, ridiculously expensive at this point in time. And it's fine. And I've heard expensive systems I just can't listen to because they're too bright or they're boomy or whatever. So it's really a matter of how you put it together. So, you know, people shouldn't think that unless you spend a lot of money, they're not going to enjoy the experience, because this is not true. I would certainly say if you buy a Project Debut 3 and you have a little more money to spend and you're happy with the rest of what you have for the time being, get a better cartridge. That'll make a huge difference. You know what, if you had spoken to me 10 years ago, I'd say that the biggest challenge is keeping vinyl alive, is finding new records, is the equipment going to be around, but all those challenges are gone now. It's unbelievable what's happened. 20 years ago I heard my first, 1982, I heard my first CD at an Audio Engineering Society meeting, and it was before there was a commercial CD, it was a Sony demonstration, and I listened, they played Roxy Music's Avalon, one of my favorite records. They played a CD of it, and it was the most worst, god-awful thing I ever heard in my life. It was just glassy and bright, and all of a sudden Brian Ferry had a speech effect. I mean, it was terrible. And I said to myself, okay, this is a new technology, it's going to have to develop, and people are going to hear this and go, that doesn't sound very good, but it's really cool. It plays without, without a disc, and it doesn't require overhang and dust and cleaning. But they'll say it sounds bad, and hopefully it'll get good. But no, when it was over, everybody said, "Did you hear that? Oh my God, that was the greatest thing I ever heard." And then I said to myself, we are screwed. Because if that's going to be what's good, I'm not going to want to listen to music anymore. So I set about dedicating my life, I swear to God, to trying to save the LP, however it might be possible. I started writing articles in magazines. I started sending letters to the editor. I did everything I could. I chased around the guy who was the head of the compact disc group, which was a group of people dedicated to promoting the compact disc. I chased that guy around and complained to him in LA every time I saw him. And now, what's happened? I wouldn't have believed it if you had told me 10 years ago, that kids would be buying turntables, that everything that comes out now in alternative rock and indie rock comes out on vinyl, that you can get whatever you want on a record, that turntable sales are up, that record, I would never have believed it. So there are no challenges as far as getting the software, as far as getting the equipment. The challenge really is to get more and more people into it and teach them how to take care of their records. That's my big concern. My big concern is, I know that my generation, most of the people who bought records, because they had to buy records, because that's all there was, they never took care of them, they scratched them, they put fingerprints all over them, and they ruined them. And there's so many ruined records out there from the 60s. So the big challenge is to teach this generation of kids that are buying records how to take care of them so they won't have a bad experience. So in a couple of years they won't go, boy, I bought all these records and they're all scratchy and noisy, and now I'm going to get rid of them. I'm going to switch to some digital format. That's the big challenge. I'm trying to tell young people, here's how you handle a record. Here's how you take a record out of a sleeve. Here's how you put it on the turntable. Because if you play records and you know how to do that, it's self-explanatory. But I realize that most young people, they don't know. Who's showing them how to do that? Nobody. So I say to them, listen, here's how you take a record out of a sleeve. Don't hold it by the edges like that, because if you do that, maybe you'll drop it. Or you're definitely going to leave oil on the beginning, and so you put the stylus at the beginning, and the oil gets picked up by the stylus, and by the time it gets halfway through, that whatever dust is on the record has stuck to the oil, and the heat is going to harden it into a ball of crap. So your record is not going to be played by the stylus, it's going to be played by the ball of crap that's stuck to the stylus. So that's the big challenge, I think, is to get all the kids that are buying records to understand how to take care of them so that they'll last for their whole life. Because I have all my records from 50 years ago, and they sound great. I'll still put them up against any CD version of all that stuff, and the record still sounds better.